it's the plant. Let's see.
I made you host, so can you give me the screen sharing rights?
Oh, yes, sorry. How do I do that?
There is the very left. You click on
Messenger,
that and then
Messenger,
that
Face
will
ID.
allow you. Very left button.
Angel. Okay.
Sarah Gleason.
Yeah.
Sarah Gleason. Oh, did we take a picture before?
I just made you a co-host, so I think you should be able to do it now.
Yeah, now I can do it.
Okay,
Sarah Gleason.
awesome.
I've jotted down all my feats and final. Sarah Gleason. Oh, did we take a picture?
Wish you jungle girl. Yeah. Good job.
Okay, you can start.
Thank you, Kosar. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Perspective series on Unleashing Empowerment, the impact of assistive animals and animal-assisted therapy on disability. I'm Nicole. I'm the Assistant Program Coordinator here at Connectra, and I'm going to be facilitating the conversation today. So I just want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you to our three amazing panelists for being here today. And before we begin, I just want to say that if you need closed captioning today, just please make sure to enable those on Zoom because they don't come up automatically. And then also just want to let everyone know that this is being live streamed today. So you're free to have your camera on or off, whatever you're more comfortable with. Just keep in mind that this is going to be posted to YouTube as well as Facebook afterwards. So we are very excited to have this open dialogue here today and answer everyone's questions. Please be mindful of staying respectful in the chat or when you ask your questions. And if you do have a question or you want to add to the conversation, you're free to just unmute yourself or type that question in chat and we'll get to it as soon as possible. So let's start off today by introducing our panelists. And I'll begin with Caitlin Mills. So Caitlin Mills is the Director of Canine Operations at Pacific Assistance Dog Society, or PADS. Caitlin attended the University of British Columbia, where she earned a BSc and PhD in Applied Animal Biology with the focus on animal welfare. Caitlin is passionate about integrating evidence-based practices to improve the lives of animals and the people who care for them. Before coming to PADS, Caitlin worked with dairy farmers and veterinarians to improve animal welfare outcomes and policies on the farm. She has consulted across sectors, including nonprofit, government, and academic institutions. So thank you so much for being here, Caitlin. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'll go ahead and introduce our second panelist, Mary Jo Fetterly. an ambassador for the Rick Hansen Foundation, chairwoman for the Disability Foundation. Mary Jo is a certified health coach with SCINU, University of Toronto, and SCIBC. She's also a yoga therapist teacher at Rhodes College. As such, she leads a busy life while living with quadriplegia, yet she still enjoys sailing, gardening, kayaking, and writing, and she doesn't think she could do it without her amazing working dog. And Mary Jo, if you want to introduce Angel, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. This is Angel. Angel here? Yep. Myla. Apple. And this is Angel. And she is the best. And I love her dearly. And we've been a team since, actually just since November. And she came into my life a year after my prior working dog, Jolie, passed away in my arms in my living room at 15 years old. Yeah. So I know I've had lots of love and love these guys very much. So I look forward to hearing more about you and
Thank you so much. So I will now introduce our last panelist, Danielle Main. She is a certified body worker, equine sports therapist, and currently a student to become a registered massage therapist. Her education has provided invaluable medical knowledge that greatly benefits client care at Leash of Hope. It was Danielle's dog Pedro, who was rescued from Mexico, that provided or proved that a rescue dog could be an assistance dog. Pedro is a rare gem. He is trained to assist Danielle, who is legally blind, by guiding her around obstacles, keeping her safe from traffic, and will even retrieve dropped objects that are out of Danielle's range of vision. Despite being legally blind, Danielle has conceptualized the program that Leash of Hope follows. She spearheads the administration, leading the board of directors as chairman and program coordinator to manage the day-to-day operations, all while going to school and working in her practice as a body worker. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that the bio, instead of the one I was sent in, was taken from an old article. I've been an RMT now since 2020.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and Pedro, unfortunately, is long retired. He's 12 now, and my current guide dog, Starling, is around here somewhere napping. So I hope that she'll join us, but she's a standard poodle and very much a part of my practice as an RMT and does a lot of therapy dog work. And but I still do run everything the same full-time as part of Leash of Hope while working full-time, and I'm a competitive rower and do a lot of advocacy and consulting work as well. So.
Well, thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and get started with the discussion. And I'd love to start with a question for Caitlin. How does your organization specifically tailor animal-assisted therapy to address the needs of individuals with disabilities?
Yeah, great question. So within PADS, we have kind of our four main program types. So our mobility service dogs, which you could see the lovely Angel with Mary Jo is one of our mobility service dogs. And so for people that are in wheelchairs, either power or manual chairs, or need bracing support, that is that type of dog. We also have our PTSD service dogs for those that live with PTSD. We have our hearing dogs for those that are deaf or hard of hearing, and then our accredited facility dogs. And these are dogs that work with many different community care providers. So whether that's in schools, it could be victim service support, psychologists, all kinds of different jobs for that stream of dogs as well. And so within all of these different types of work that these wonderful dogs do, they are specifically trained for the job in front of them. So Angel, for example, would have tasks that are very specific to Mary Jo, and same with any of our other dogs that are placed with an individual, and as well as the AFDs or accredited facility dogs that are placed with a community group of some kind. So they go through very specific training to make sure that they are up for the job in front of them, and are able to serve their client or their community for many years during their working life.
Awesome. Mary Jo or Danielle, if you also wanted to answer the question, feel free to.
Yeah, so at Leash of Hope, we have three divisions of dogs that we trained that fall under what's considered medical alerts, which are people with more invisible disabilities, mobility task trained dogs, and guide dogs. And because we're a very small grassroots organization, we really take the time to work with people's individuals' needs to also custom train what the person needs as far as the dog's specific tasking, which is a really critical part of whether a dog is considered a service dog or not. Sorry, I've got a little companion here. My cat Poe has decided to be part of the panel today. He's also blind. So within that, because our program is so small, we really take the time to work with people individually. And part of our mission with that is we actually use rescue puppies often from shelters, not always, but it's part of our kind of mission. So that's our program's tag phrase because of that is providing hope at both ends of the leash. So it's kind of fun, and you get to work with all sorts of different types of dogs that fit within the suitability requirements for a service or a guide dog.
I'm just curious, is the training for a dog who was rescued different than the training for a different type of dog?
A good question.
I would say no, because the expectations and the bar is the same. So for these dogs to be able to be in public, they have to have a certain level of temperament and suitability. So because of that, we're not working with dogs that need any kind of rehabilitative training or care. We're working with dogs that have that baseline temperament that we're looking for. It just takes us a bit more work to weed out suitable candidates. So we just spend more time kind of there, but otherwise that bar is the same. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Danielle.
I was gonna. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Is it still that question, or are you moving on?
Oh, I was gonna move on, but if you did want to add something, feel free.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I love the idea that that rescue dogs are being used. And I think that's so beautiful, and actually, and I think in many ways, like what Paz did a long time ago, and you were just talking about breeding for temperament, Danielle, or just choosing dogs for temperament or trying to figure that out. And I think that was one of the really cool things that in my history with Paz happened over the last 15 years since I've been involved, because it used to be just sort of a couple streams of dogs, and they used to bring my dog originally. Jolie was from actually the CNI Institute down in California, because she was being brought up to BC in those days back in 2004 to be a breeding dog, because they saw that it was so important to think about temperament and to really start with candidates that already had the right temperament, and then you could train them pretty much anything. If you're a good dog trainer, then you're good that way. So it was really neat to see that evolution in Paz, that now most of the dogs are actually bred in-house, and that's pretty cool too, the breeding program. I don't think you mentioned that, Caitlin, but I think it's cool that you guys have done that. So from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Jo. And so we do have an in-house breeding program. Danielle, I think it's amazing that you're using rescue dogs at your organization. In the past, we have as well. We do mostly now have our own breeding program and breed from purpose-bred dogs within the ADI, the Assistance Dog International Breeding Cooperative. So Mary Jo, we do still bring dogs in from all over the place to make sure that we have good genetic diversity while still making sure that temperament base is there for wonderful, successful working dogs. So I think, that it's really exciting to see programs trying new things and finding all different ways of making sure we're getting as many good quality working dogs to their people. And I think that's the beauty of it, is everyone's going to do things a little bit differently and find what works best for them.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I have a question for Mary Jo. What are some common misconceptions about animal-assisted therapy, and how do you address those?
Wow. That's a great question. So I think there's many misconceptions, unfortunately, from, all the way from, oh, that poor dog, it's having to work all day long, that's a horrible life for a dog, to, does the dog ever get to play, to, what happens to the dogs if, they don't make it through the training, and there's this other misconception in that area. And I think it's wonderful, like, that all of our organizations take, first of all, the training of the dogs really seriously, and that we recognize as handlers that we are, we're always training throughout the course and the life of the dog. And so some of the misconceptions, I think, are actually, part of that we're training into the public, this notion that these guys, like, save my life, they make me safe, they're incredible, and they do an incredible job. But on top of all that, they get to be a dog. And I think that's also really important, and that you develop this relationship with them, and that, like anybody else, I mean, I bred golden retrievers before I was injured and became paralyzed. And I've always had relationships with dogs. And I think that relationship is incredibly unique. And having had relationships prior to my injury, and prior, many relationships, I had horses and dogs and cats and chickens and all sorts of things. But I will say that since having a working dog, and since being really schooled properly in how to continue to train them and how to take care of them, just in ways that I would never have thought of with my dogs at the farm, that I think the misconceptions are easy to blow out of the water as soon as you talk to people, because they are there, and the biases are, like everything that I said, but there's really, there's no reason for them. And in fact, probably my relationship to my dog now, is like on the scale of 1 to 10, up at a 10 in terms of how I think false those misconceptions are, and how much that dog has an enjoyable life, and also how much it means to me in so many ways that I couldn't even count. So that's what I would say.
Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, totally. I just there's a couple things that strike me from what you say, Mary Jo, when you talk about when people, and I have gotten that comment, like, oh, that poor dog has to work all day. When I go back home to my parents, where my retired dog Pedro lives, every time I try to leave the car and I go to start gearing up my current guide dog, he will push her out of the way and try to put his head through that equipment. And the funny thing is, I don't think he genuinely actually really wants to work that much these days, but it was such a joyous partnership that I think that really reiterates, that message. And I think, aside from the second thing that came to my mind when I think of misconceptions in public, is that when people see these dogs walking around, unfortunately, I think that people don't realize that they're seeing like the surface level end product of all of the work that goes into these dogs. And that it's not just as easy as like throwing a vest on a dog and bringing them in public, which I know is a bit of a hot topic in the industry. But I think that is a common misconception, and people don't realize like the amount of work that goes into training them, and also the amount of safety awareness that has to go into keeping the animal's welfare in mind. And I feel like that's a really common misconception, that people have no idea how deep that goes.
And if I can just add, I know Danielle and Mary Jo have articulated it beautifully from clients being clients themselves. But one thing I do want to add from clients in our community that have invisible disabilities is that a big misconception is that just because you can't see what that dog is doing for that client doesn't mean they are not being incredibly impactful. And I think particularly for our PTSD clients, they experience that quite often, and people questioning them and questioning the legitimacy of having their dog with them in public. And that's incredibly not only really deeply hurtful and can sometimes be quite traumatizing for them as a client. But yeah, again, just another misconception to add to the bunch.
Totally.
Wow.
Or
Good
the idea
point.
of that a disability has to look like something, you know,
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I guess just as a final point too, I think biases around ableism come into this in a way that we don't even need to get into because it's too philosophical and psychological of a conversation. But that bias is there as well, just like Caitlin pointed out with the invisible disabilities, that we have this bias. So maybe that person shouldn't have their dog on the bus because I can't, or something. I don't know, But anyway.
Yeah, totally. So this is a question just for any of you to answer. How do animals in therapy settings help individuals with disabilities develop social skills and emotional regulation?
Oh, sorry, this question just makes me smile because in our medical alert division of Leash of Hope, we work with a lot of young kids who oftentimes have things like autism, and the development that we see from working with these kids, especially as they go from young children, through the dog's lifetime, which sometimes can be 10 years, into youth and sometimes young adults, it's night and day. So when I hear questions like that, I don't think people realize, and sometimes even the parents of these kids realize, what a social impact that these dogs can make with teaching people how to regulate and ground. And it's probably one of the favorite parts of my job, actually. Yeah.
I would say we hear this all the time in our PTSD program specifically. I mean, we hear it in all of our programs, but the stories of people being able to re-engage with the world, re-engage in work or in school or in other social settings around people that they maybe would not have felt safe in that situation before, but because they have their dog, because they're able to have that kind of grounding, that emotional regulation that can exist between the partnership, that we hear just incredible stories of people's lives just fully opening up again after receiving one of their dogs.
I'll add a lovely little adjunct to that. I haven't taught as much therapeutic yoga with Angel as I did with Jolie, but it was just beautiful to see. And she wasn't necessarily trained as a therapy dog per se, right? We're to be clear, she's a service dog, an assistive dog. So, but when Jolie was in yoga class, it was nobody did not know that dog, and everybody would, if Jolie was like, well, first of all, at the end of the class, Jolie, in her very quiet, demure way, would go around to everybody and just stand in front of them and just hold herself steady. And they could, give her pets and love. And time again, everybody would say, I just come to yoga for Jolie. Because I think it was just that beautiful connection that they offer. And yeah. And I'm sure there was attunement and all sorts of other things going on in that room that, on the psychology level of PTSD and all those things, I had no, I don't have the privy to say, but I'm sure they did go on. Yeah.
That sounds a lot like my RMT practice when my clients come in and go, "Where's Starling?" And I'll do the same thing. Well, what are you here for? But I often I make sure that she gets a break in the middle of my workday. So inevitably there's one of my patient blocks where she's not there for, and some very upset people that I'm like, yeah, I'm here too. So for the same reasons, because the dog provides such therapeutic value.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is another question that any of you are free to answer. What is the process of selecting and training assistance dogs to meet the diverse needs of people with disabilities?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So for us, as I mentioned before, we have our own breeding program. So our dogs are purpose bred, and we start assessments on them at 8 weeks old. So we are trying to figure out exactly what their little personalities are going to be and how that could potentially fit with any of our different types of service programs that we offer. At that point, we continue to assess them for the year and a half that they are raised in loving volunteer homes with our puppy raisers. And then at that point, they join us on one of our campuses. So we operate out of Calgary and Burnaby, BC. And they work with our professional trainers, again, continually going under assessment to make sure that they have the right temperament, and then also working with those trainers to develop those skills and make sure that they have all of the necessary skills to go on and help their potential client. So it's a 2.5-year process to get the dogs from the whelping home all the way through to working with their client. And throughout the entire process, they're going through rigorous testing and assessments to make sure that they have the temperament and the skills to be successful in their job.
And can I add to that? Just this is not through knowledge because I don't work for PADS, but I've been around. And is it such that because you guys have 5 different streams now that you're actually so if it doesn't make it into one stream or it seems to have good qualities for therapy but not for pulling someone in a wheelchair or manual chair or something, then you can kind of put them into the right stream. Is that true? And it's a little different training for each?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Mary Jo. So each of the dogs, there's going to be work that they love to do based on their personality and based on maybe how much energy they have or kind of how exuberant they are or how they like to interact with lots of people versus maybe one person. And so all of that is taken into consideration when we're trying to figure out the job that they're going to do for their life, because we want to make sure from an animal welfare perspective, we also want to make sure that they're going to enjoy the work. And like Danielle was saying with her retired pup, they love the work. They want to do the work and they want to be there. And that's what we want for them as well. We want them to enjoy it and get up every day excited to help their people or their community. And so making sure that they're a personality fit for the job is a big part of it.
There's a lot of parallels, and I think that between what you guys do and with the standards that we do at Leash of Hope, but I think that for any program or professional training dogs, a lot of the themes are really universal, which is part of why it's actually really important that people do seek out dogs for assistance work from professionals, because we take so much time again to put this work and do this proper assessment on these dogs. So just to reiterate what you're saying, our dogs also take about 2 years. And whether that's, some of the earlier stages where we're doing a lot of temperament assessing, because maybe we are getting young puppies in that are rescues, and we do a lot of medical testing to make sure that they're going to be sound as well. And then we do temperament testing and aptitude testing to see what type of work they want or will excel in. So these things are definitely like universal between these programs, and really I think is a testament to why it's so important to go through a professional or a program to get these dogs to have in your life and to be in public, because the work is in the proof of the dogs that are out there, and it's just really cool. So
yeah, on that note, do any of you have any success stories that highlight the impact of animal assistance?
Oh man,
So many.
I got so many, but I'll let Danielle and Mary Jo answer this, because I think from their own personal experience, that's much more impactful.
Well, I guess for my personal story, I do have a degenerative eye disease, so I am low vision blind, and so I'm on my 2nd guide dog now. And it's the first one I feel like is always so hard. Pedro was so special for me. But now that I have Starling, she's got a special place in my heart. But I think a real testament to the value of these dogs is I had a period of time between them where I was just a full-time red and white cane user. And I couldn't move through the world as easily. I couldn't move through the world as safely. Once once Starling's training was done and the light bulb went off, and there was a moment where someone was, turning a car when I had the right of way as a pedestrian, and I could feel her kind of lurch and spring forward. And it was like that moment as a fairly young guide dog, where I think the light bulb went off of what her purpose, really, really was. And it's moments like that if I had a cane, I would be totally hooped. So my life is infinitely better with the help of a dog, and of course it's a partnership, and there's also so much other emotional and therapeutic value. But I've, as you said, that's my personal experience. But it's hard to want to put my own story forward when I do work with a program as well. When I see, we've got young kids with CP and autism that are voice commanded by a parent from behind so that the child can have stability and balance and regulation. We've got dogs that are trained, we've got one dog that's trained on the island to help someone who's a runner who's totally blind and hearing impaired. And the dog actually will run with her, and she also works in a clinical setting, and the dog has huge value there. So it's hard to pick one story, I guess, but because these dogs are they're super incredible. So there's 3, mine and 2 others.
Those are great stories, Danielle. And yeah, just to further that, I think it's as you said, it's the personal relationship and the connection that, for me anyways, are just over the top. I don't know how other people are with their disability, but I know for me anyways, personal contact with an animal or another living thing was really lacking because people are somehow afraid of a disability in terms of personal connection. I don't know why, or physical connection. So that for me was a huge piece. And Jolie was amazing at it, and Angel's even better, if there could be such a truth, but it is true. And to the kind of I think the credit of having a dog that's well trained and that has manners, and you don't have to spend a lot of time dealing with that. So for me, without hand function, being out with her in public is brilliant. Like she, it's so easy, and she, rescues all sorts of things for me all day long when I'm out and about, which didn't happen, as Danielle was saying, during that time when I was waiting, and also just processing Jolie's passing, because it was such a significant relationship. It was my first one. But during that time, I didn't go out as much. And I honestly, although I had grieved Jolie for a little bit, I realized that the other piece of that was I just wasn't being as social and interacting. And the other piece was I didn't get a good response from a lot of people out in the world that I get when I have a working dog, which is kind of contrary to what we talked about earlier in terms of the bias. But honestly, there's a lot more people that love it than have weird biases. So that's part of that. And then I guess the last really important piece is the ongoing training that we get as handlers. And with Jolie, we hadn't really developed that program at PATS, I don't think, to the degree we have it now. But the support and also the ongoing, fine-tuning of these animals to really continue to do the job that is needed, and at the same time to problem solve any places where they can't, where they're not happy, and or really doing what they love to do. So I think there's that, and on that note, so when Jolie was trained, I had specifically needed someone that could help me. I have terrible spasms. I don't take any of the pharmaceuticals, and so my legs bounce a lot, and when I'm out in public, it's dangerous. Like if I'm in my manual chair, forget it. I'm hooped, literally. And so Jolie, Ron had trained that into Jolie because they knew it was on my chart, and she was there a little bit longer than other dogs, just for a couple different reasons. But with Angel, we've had to train that into her, and now if my legs are bouncing in another room, she's there like a friggin' dart out of like heaven. And on my lap in no time, and everything calms down, and I don't have to, reset my whole body on the chair. I don't have to go through the whole process of getting everything off that was on my lap back on my lap. So it's just like, it's kind of it's almost hard to imagine how much these guys pick up on what you need just by living with you and being there full time with you, although they get time off. I think even when they're time off, because you have such a bonded relationship, they're connected to you, so they can turn off and be puppy and be, she can play with her toy for a while. But if my legs started bouncing, she'd probably jump up on my lap, give me a kiss, and stop that too. So yeah, it's just kind of like that.
So true.
Awesome. I have a question for Caitlin. Can you address any challenges or limitations you've encountered in working with PADS, and how have you dealt with those?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think for us, the biggest limitation is we're a nonprofit. We provide these dogs to our clients free of charge. And in order to do that, we are completely donor funded. And so for us, I think the biggest limitation is kind of making sure that we're able to keep those donations coming in so that we can place these incredible dogs with their clients.
Did anyone else want to answer that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Similarly, being a nonprofit and registered charity, it is very hard to meet the needs and the demand out there. And I think the pandemic was hard on everyone, but especially was quite hard on charitable organizations, and also hard for programs. And I'm sure this was the same probably for PADS to continue with the raising and training of dogs to the specifications that we need to, without having access to public places and the correct environments that we needed to be, with all of the social distancing and lockdown. So that definitely created a barrier. And for us, because we are a small grassroots organization, we're being around, actually this year is Leash of Hope is 10 years old. So we're well known now. But when we first started out, it's not, starting an organization from the ground up is not for the faint of heart.
Awesome. Can any of you discuss the legal rights and protections for individuals with assistance dogs?
Oh, I mean, Caitlin and Danielle might know more about this, but I know I have a card. I have examinations every year to make sure that my dog is following all of the right protocols and behaviors that are needing to be approved of by the Attorney General. Actually, it is in BC. And we do have rights because we carry that card around, and that card legitimizes us to bring our dog into anywhere, basically, with us. So any public space, hospitals. Jolie was in the hospital with me for a good month when I had a broken leg, and she wouldn't leave my side, and so that's where she got to be, and she even got up on the bed with me. So yeah, I think it's really exceptional. I think the way that because the Leash of Hope and PADS have done such a good job, I think, of building awareness, and it kind of, I think, solidifying that this idea that working dog is with you all the time, because that's part of why we have them, that has become very I guess official, and so it's much easier to show someone your card if they have an issue with that. So that's what I would have to say.
If I can just add on to that, thank you, Mary Jo, for the card she's talking about. So I can speak about BC because that's where our organization is kind of headquartered. But our clients and their dogs are protected under the Guide Dog and Service Dog Act of British Columbia. And so the card that Mary Jo was talking about is a government ID that is provided because we are an assistance dog international accredited organization. Our clients, as well as our dogs in training, have government ID that is provided to them, as long as we uphold our end of that, which is making sure that, like Mary Jo said, we're doing annual assessments to make sure that the dogs are suited for public access and their behavior is being maintained by our fantastic clients. As Mary Jo said, she is a dog trainer because of all the work that she has to do to keep up Angel's behavior. And we want to make sure that those dogs are appropriate and doing what they need to be doing in public. And so that's our end of it, to make sure that these dogs are in public spaces, they're respectful, but that the clients also, their legal rights are protected by having that dog with them in public spaces, and that is not questioned. And so part of my job is I get to be an advocate when things don't go as well as they should. So when our clients are denied public access, when they have any issues bringing their dog somewhere and they're told they cannot, then the clients bring it to me and I get to advocate on their behalf to make sure that that they don't also have to take on that burden of having those discussions with businesses or whatever transportation or whatever the public access issue is. At PADS, we make sure that we advocate on behalf of our clients for those situations as well.
Yeah. I'll add, obviously Leash of Hope, everything's very similar. We're not ADI accredited, we're smaller. So we do go through prudential standards of testing and also meet, I think there's some federal standards, but we do go through the provincial testing standards. But aside from that, I also think it's important to add that as far as the rights of people with disabilities that have properly trained dogs, because the reality is not everyone who's around here is going to have a dog from BC. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the right to be there. Lots of people acquire dogs from out of country or out of province. And I think that's why there is that second tier of federal laws that says if there is a dog that's clearly identifiable and is clearly not causing disruption and is clearly properly trained to assist someone with a disability, whether you can see it or not, they do have the right to be there. But more than that, that the public also doesn't have the right to start asking them, what's your condition? What's wrong with you? Why do you need the dog? And that's something that's really important, because we also end up doing a lot of advocacy with our clients, that we end up teaching the public, like, well, you don't just have the right to ask someone about their medical history just because they have a physical identifier that they need some assistance or that they have medical considerations. So I think that's also part of the work that we also end up doing at Leash of Hope, and we definitely get some funny ones with public, having real misconceptions of what they think they're allowed to do or ask for just because they see the dog there in public.
Thanks, Danielle. Caitlin, you mentioned that the dogs get assessments. I'm just curious, what do those assessments look like?
Sure. So one assessment that we do throughout kind of the life, it's a standardized assessment that's done. It started on guide dogs. It's called the GD BART, which is an acronym for something that I never remember all of the letters for, but that is the name of the test itself. And that test is done. The dogs come in. So as I mentioned, the first one happens at 8 weeks of age. And it's really just to get to know how they respond in to different stimuli in different environments. So we have novel objects that they've never encountered before. There's novel underfootings. So different types of things that they step on to see how they react to noise or the touch or any things like that. We have novel sounds, so there will be a vacuum cleaner and other things that will go off to see how they respond. It's really just a way to get to know their personality and see, okay, what is it in their environment that is either very exciting to them, maybe a little bit worrisome to them. They try on all the different harnesses to see Okay, would they do well in a guide dog harness, for example, like Danielle's dog would wear, or a mobility harness or a bracing harness for one of our bracing clients. So we try out all these different things to get an idea. All of that is scored and it's standardized. And they take that test several times throughout their training with us to see what we can look at over time. So we can look at consistency over the behavior over time, or if things change over time, and that helps us make more informed decisions.
Wow, fascinating. What are some of the considerations, and anyone can answer this one. What are some of the considerations for ensuring the well-being and welfare of assistance dogs in their role?
I can start. I think that's one of the great things of the ongoing training, and the relationship that you build with your animal. And the considerations are many. That your dog is happy, I think, is first and foremost. That your dog is healthy, and the weight, their weight is maintained. And I mean, we go through a lot of that type of training in our ongoing education seminars. And of course, that's a two-way street. We can ask questions of the trainers and of the people of PADS that are doing those seminars, so that we have a really, a great resource if there's any issues or whatever. We're required at PADS as clients, we're required to monthly submit a report on that animal, on everything from behavior to how often we brush their teeth, to how many times we brush their coat, to off leash time, to whatever may occur in the life of that animal and in your life with them. And so that assessment it's not really an assessment as much as a check-in. And if there was issues that I was having, like say, Angel was going sour on a certain thing that I needed her to do for me, a certain task or a certain skill, there would be then the opportunity to write on that check-in every month. I really need help with this, or I'm not sure why this is happening. And so there would be some professional trainer that will get back to me, usually someone that either knows me or worked with Angel before, to work with that. And their health, I think, is their and I when I say health, I don't mean just their physical, but I think their mental, their emotional, and their spirit. They need to be happy ongoing, and I think that's really part of what we're trained with and help with.
Yeah, I would echo what Mary Jo said there. I think for me, making sure the dog loves the job is number one. When we're talking about welfare, when we're talking about whether these dogs have, and when I'm talking about welfare, it's their physical health, like Mary Jo was talking about, making sure that their nails are clipped and their teeth are brushed and they're seeing the vet regularly, all those good things. But it is that emotional health too, and making sure that they enjoy the work and they're not dreading doing tasks for their client or their community. They need to like it, because if I think about it in our work, when we go to work every day, your welfare is better if you're able to enjoy what you do and take a lot of pride in what you do and get excited about it. And I think our animals are the same. And so making sure that they enjoy the work. And that's why we do so many assessments and really find the best option for the dog, because we want them to enjoy it for a long time and have a nice long working partnership with their client.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll add that I think, along with all of those things, since you've been touched on, that part of what's really important for us with our clientele as well is making sure that they have the ability to assess situations, to make decisions for the dog's welfare, whether that's in social situations where the dog is interacting with other animals or going into public places, especially if it's really busy. And part of our initial placement, Dogs with Clients does require some kind of book learning to make sure that they can understand these concepts and not just demonstrate protocols for the animal's safety. And I think that's a key part of why as well, having professionals work with people to determine if a dog is a suitable tool for someone is really important, because the animal's welfare is paramount. It's very, very important. And that's kind of our three rule Leash of Hope is the dog safe first, is the client safe, and the public safe. And so that's a big part of, I think, handler education, which people don't necessarily realize either, right? Finally got an appearance. Right? Yeah.
That's really
Right.
cute. And by the way, I did not stage that when she had to jump up and do the after I just talked about that, she totally, yeah.
Good timing for a demonstration, right?
Yeah. Right.
All right, so looking ahead, what do you all envision as the future of assistance dogs in supporting individuals with disabilities?
Oh, I would love to see more public education, so that the understanding of what service and guide dogs look like to the public is more universal, so that there's less access issues, and also so that public is like reassured when they see a properly trained working dog, that their business is safe and their patrons are safe. And I would love to see more professional services available to people, because the more programs that we have, like Leash of Hope, like PADS, like BC Guide Dogs, that are properly training and putting dogs in public to meet the needs of people who have the necessity for a working dog, I think the better, because the safer everyone is, the more that we have animal welfare is being considered, and the safer the public is too.
I would agree, Danielle. Oops, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mary Jo.
I just have a short, yeah, I would agree. I think that's all really important. And I think that we need, like, probably a six, I had to wait a long time to get Jolie. That was back in 2005. And it was a 6-year waiting list then. So even though I know PAS has expanded, but I think we need more donators. We need public awareness so that we can make this accessible for anybody that would like a working dog, that could use one and would be a good handler and a good home. And I think public education, I would totally agree, Danielle, is so vital. So those things are all, what I'd like to see. And I know there's lots of people that would love working dogs, and maybe the education, not just for the public, would be a good idea, but like what we're doing, I think this is a really great thing for people who may have thought about it, but don't, they need some things demystified. As a client, that's also a really good way that we could move forward with this.
Yeah, and I'll just add, those are all beautiful points from both of you. The only thing I would add to that is also, yes, capacity is a big one. We're always looking for ways that we can kind of decrease our wait lists. As Mary Jo said, it's not quite as long as it used to be in 2005 when you got Jolie, but we still have wait lists that are far too long because of we're at our capacity and we're producing as much as we can with the donations that we receive. And the other thing that I would say is, from a training perspective, from a disability studies perspective, we are really excited to be partnering with universities, with researchers, to how do we make the most evidence-based decision-making for our dogs and for our clients. So how do we take the lived experiences of people with these dogs that are clients, not just PADS, but clients across Canada, across other countries, and use that to make evidence-based decisions that is in everyone's best interest. So I think partnerships with researchers, partnerships with different institutions to build that knowledge base and what we know about service dogs, about service dog users, and how we can just elevate the industry by improving those evidence-based practices.
I love that. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. So just to finish off, does any of you have any resources or support networks that people can reach out to if they're interested in accessing assistance animals?
I mean, for us, you can check out pads.ca. If you're not in Western Canada and you would like to find an organization near you, my suggestion would be Assistance Dog International. They have a find an organization near you page. And so that's a great resource if you're looking around and trying to find something. But yeah, for us, pads.ca, you can find everything about our programs, what we offer. And if you'd like to get involved as a volunteer or a donor, we're always looking for people to join our community.
Caitlin, do you want to just put that in the chat so people can go straight to the website?
Absolutely, I'll do that right now.
Much. And Danielle or Mary Jo, if either of you have anything else to add.
Yeah, of course, I'll do a similar plug. You can find me and my colleagues, what we do at leashofhope.com. We also have social media. I would also say to general public too, for resources, definitely checking out each province or area that you're from has information on guide and service dog standards and regulations, which can be really helpful. So if you're someone from the public who has a dog or encountering dogs and you want to know about rights and regulations, that's also an option. But for our program specifically, we do have Instagram and Facebook at Leash of Hope Assistance Dogs, and our website is leashofhope.com. And we're also always looking for donors, volunteers, and help as much as we can. And as is the way of running any kind of charity, especially with animals. So.
That's great. Well, this isn't a plug for any specific thing, but I would say that if you are thinking about a working dog, I'll plug talking to someone that has one is a really great idea, and sort of that peer kind of relationship can be a wealth of information and understanding. So I would recommend that, and watch videos like on YouTube. I know Pads has a channel there. I'm sure, as Danielle said, there's other ways that you can, just kind of take a look and see, and wherever you live, wherever you are, good luck with your new working dog if you get one.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our lovely panelists. That was a great discussion about assistance dogs. If anyone who joined the meeting today has any questions or would like to connect with any of the panelists, you can email Emily, who's our program coordinator at Connectra, and I'll plug her email into the chat. And then just another reminder that this has been live streamed, and you can access the video at our YouTube, at Connectra's YouTube, as well as our Facebook page. And then I'll just add those links to the chat for the Facebook and the YouTube. And again, thank you guys so much. That was such a lovely conversation. I know I learned a lot personally. And yeah, if there's any last comments you want to add, feel free to.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's been lovely to meet all three of you. And it's been a great discussion.
Yeah, I would echo that. Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute pleasure, and I'd be happy to connect with anyone if they're interested about learning more.
Awesome.
And me as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think you can, get a hold of me probably, I don't know, through Emily, or I have a website, maryjo.com, but I'm happy to answer questions and talk to any peer if you have questions about working dogs. So yeah.
Awesome.
And
Thank
you're
you.
fortunate if you get one. I'll just say that. I would say good luck with your new working dog, but it's a real fortune. I think it's a real gift. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. I've just linked Emily's email in the chat just in case. And yeah, if there's absolutely anything else, we have our website that you can also reach, that I will be adding to the chat as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye.